My name is Laura Bennett, and until 3 days ago I thought I knew everything about my husband. 36 years old, devoted treasurer of the Evergreen Estates HOA in suburban Denver, married to the love of my life for 12 years. That was my identity. That was my truth. Until Ryan's BMW slammed into a semi on I-70 during a sudden April snowstorm. The police said he died instantly. Small mercy, they called it. No suffering, just gone between one heartbeat and the next. I'd been home finalizing the quarterly HOA financial report he'd asked me to double-check for Monday's board meeting, the meeting that would never happen now. The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I just glanced at my laptop clock, thinking Ryan was running late from his usual late-night HOA paperwork session. 2 officers stood on my porch, snow dusting their shoulders. The younger one kept clearing his throat. The older one delivered the news. Mrs. Bennett, there's been an accident. The next 3 days blurred together. Phone calls, arrangements, relatives flying in from Phoenix and Seattle. Everyone kept asking what they could do. I had no answers. I moved through the funeral preparations like a ghost, signing papers, choosing flowers, picking hymns for a service I couldn't imagine surviving. The community clubhouse suggested a closed casket. The accident had been severe. I agreed numbly, grateful to be spared that final image. Instead, I placed our wedding photo on top of the polished mahogany, Ryan grinning, arm around me, both of us impossibly young and certain our quiet life in this picture-perfect HOA neighborhood could weather anything. The memorial was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at the Evergreen Estates clubhouse. Ryan wasn't particularly religious, but his mother insisted on a short service. I didn't have the energy to argue. I dressed mechanically in the black sheath I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 2 years earlier. The irony stung. Ryan had held my hand through that loss. Now I faced his memorial alone. The clubhouse filled quickly. HOA board members occupied the front rows, their faces somber under the recessed lighting. Neighbors, friends from college, even the couple whose fence Ryan helped repair last summer, all came to say goodbye. I sat in the front between his parents, their grief heavy beside me. His mother clutched my hand so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers. The HOA secretary gave a short eulogy about eternal life and God's plan for our community. Empty words. Various people stood to share memories. Ryan's best friend from high school, his first boss, the neighbor who recalled how Ryan once quietly paid a widow's overdue HOA dues out of his own pocket, so she wouldn't lose her home. Each story twisted like a knife. I was supposed to speak. I'd written something the night before at our kitchen table with a glass of wine I couldn't drink. But when the MC nodded to me, I stayed frozen. Ryan's father touched my shoulder gently and whispered it was okay. The service concluded with amazing grace, as the final notes faded and people began filing out for the procession to the cemetery. I remained seated. I wasn't ready. Would never be ready. The clubhouse gradually emptied until only immediate family, the funeral director, and I remained. That's when I heard the click of heels on the polished tile. She entered through the main doors like she owned the place. Everyone else wore muted blacks and grays. She blazed in red, a form-fitting dress that emphasized the obvious swell of her pregnancy. Her dark hair was styled in loose waves. Makeup flawless. I recognized her immediately as Vanessa Hargrove, the HOA president for the past 2 years. Always professionally pleasant at board meetings, always quick with a smile and a new rule. But there was nothing professional about her entrance now. She walked straight down the center aisle, one hand pressed protectively over her rounded belly. The funeral director stepped forward, confused, but she brushed past him. She stopped directly in front of the casket, placed a single white rose on top, then turned to face those of us still seated. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. Her eyes found mine and held them. "All of your losses. But Ryan wouldn't want me to hide anymore. He wouldn't want his child to grow up in shadows. Ryan's mother gasped. His father stood abruptly. I felt the blood drain from my face as the implication sank in. Vanessa's hand moved in slow circles over her belly. 6 months along. It's a boy. Ryan was so excited when we found out. She smiled a soft, secret smile that suggested intimate moments I couldn't bear to imagine. He promised he'd take care of us. Promised me everything would be ours, mine and the baby's. He said he'd already started making arrangements. The clubhouse spun around me. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not in front of Ryan's casket with our wedding photo smiling down. But Vanessa wasn't finished. I know this is a shock. Ryan wanted to tell you himself. Laura, he said after the divorce was finalized we could stop pretending. But now, she gestured helplessly at the casket. Now I have to honor his wishes myself. He promised it all to me, to us, and I have proof. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a folded paper. His own words. His promises. Everything he wanted for our son. I stood on unsteady legs. Ryan's parents flanking me. The funeral director looked mortified. Clearly unsure how to handle this unprecedented HOA drama inside his own clubhouse. But I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at this woman in red who claimed to carry my husband's child. My husband who was supposed to be working late on HOA budgets all those nights. My husband who'd been distant lately, distracted, but I'd attributed it to the stress of the upcoming annual meeting and the endless complaints about lawn heights and mailbox colors. My husband whose phone I'd never thought to check, whose emails I'd never doubted, whose love I'd never questioned. Until now. The envelope arrived 3 days after I buried my husband. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table staring at a cup of coffee gone cold when the doorbell rang. A courier stood on my porch requiring my signature for a package from Hargrove and Associates, a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside was a formal letter on expensive letterhead. Dear Mrs. Bennett, we represent Ms. Vanessa Hargrove in the matter of the estate of Ryan Bennett. Our client has provided documentation of a binding agreement between herself and the deceased dated 8 months prior to his passing. We request your immediate attention to avoid prolonged legal proceedings. Enclosed, please find copies of relevant documents. I sank into a chair, the papers spreading like poison. There was a handwritten agreement supposedly in Ryan's writing promising to provide for Vanessa and our child, including transferring the family home free and clear upon his death. There was a grainy ultrasound image with Ryan's name listed as the father. There was an audio file transcript of a voicemail. Vanessa, it's me. Don't worry about anything. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of. I promise. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the memorial. Friends checking in. Ryan's colleagues offering condolences. Even a few nosy neighbors who'd somehow gotten wind of the red dress spectacle. I'd ignored them all. But this I couldn't ignore. I called Tom Morrison, the lawyer who'd helped us with our wills 5 years ago. He listened in silence as I explained, occasionally humming thoughtfully. Laura, I need to see everything she's provided. But I should tell you up front, I don't handle estate disputes involving HOA claims. You're going to need someone who can play hardball. The next morning I drove to Tom's office with a box full of documents. Our marriage certificate, Ryan's will, bank statements, life insurance policies, and every HOA notice Vanessa had ever sent us. Tom examined everything carefully, his frown deepening with each page. The will is clear, everything goes to you. But if she can prove paternity and that Ryan made promises, Colorado law gets complicated when children's rights collide with HOA liens. Especially when the president herself is making the claim. I thought about Ryan's parents, how they'd barely spoken to me since the memorial. When I'd called his mother to tell her about the letter, she'd been strangely evasive. Perhaps you didn't know Ryan as well as you thought, she said before hanging up. The betrayal stung almost as much as Vanessa's claims. Tom recommended Dylan Keats, describing him as a pit bull in Armani. I made an appointment for the following day. That night, I went through Ryan's home office for the first time since his death. His laptop was password protected, but I knew his usual combinations. Nothing worked. He changed them. I found myself studying the handwritten agreement Vanessa had provided, comparing it to birthday cards and notes Ryan had written me over the years. The similarities were there, but something felt off. The way he formed his lowercase g wasn't quite right. The slant was too pronounced. Doubt crept in. When was the last time I'd actually seen his handwriting? Everything was digital now, texts, emails, typed HOA minutes. I searched through his desk drawers. Receipts. Old board agendas. Nothing unusual. But in the back of the bottom drawer I found a USB drive I didn't recognize. When I plugged it in, it required a password. The next revelation came from an unexpected source. James, Ryan's friend from the board, called asking to meet for coffee. He looked uncomfortable as he slid into the booth across from me at a quiet cafe downtown. I debated whether to tell you this, he began, clutching his coffee cup. But you deserve to know. About 6 months ago, Ryan had to formally reprimand Vanessa. She'd falsified some HOA expense reports, tried to claim personal purchases as community improvements. It was enough to remove her from the board, but Ryan gave her another chance. He felt bad. She'd been going through a rough divorce, needed the position. My heart raced. Do you have proof of this? Board minutes would have the documentation, but Laura, he hesitated. After that incident, Vanessa became different, more aggressive in pursuing Ryan's attention, staying late when he stayed late, finding excuses to travel with him to regional HOA conferences. Some of us noticed, but Ryan seemed oblivious. Or maybe he just wanted to keep things professional. That evening I called 3 other board members. 2 confirmed they'd noticed Vanessa's behavior change. The third, Ryan's direct report on the finance committee, added another detail. A month before the accident, Ryan asked me to start sitting in on all his meetings with Vanessa. He said he wanted a witness present for documentation purposes. I thought it was weird at the time. I compiled every piece of information, every inconsistency, every doubt. But Vanessa's lawyer had sent another letter, this one with a deadline. Respond within 10 days or they would file a formal claim against the estate and ask the HOA board to place a lien on the house for community debts. They'd also scheduled a press conference claiming Ryan's widow was trying to deny his child's rightful inheritance. The vultures were circling. Ryan's life insurance company called to inform me they were freezing the payout pending investigation. The mortgage company wanted to discuss the status of our joint accounts. Everything we'd built together was under assault by a woman in a red dress and her unborn child. But the worst part was the doubt. Late at night, staring at the empty space beside me in bed, I wondered, what if it was true? What if the man I'd loved for 12 years had been living a double life? What if every late-night HOA meeting had been a lie? What if every "I love you" had been hollow? The evidence Vanessa provided seemed real enough. The audio was Ryan's voice, though something about the cadence felt stilted. The handwriting was close enough to create uncertainty. And the timeline, 8 months ago, would have been during his heavy travel period for the regional HOA conference. I made lists of what I knew for certain versus what Vanessa claimed. I mapped out Ryan's schedule for the past year, cross-referencing his calendar with credit card statements. I became a detective investigating my own marriage, and I hated every minute of it. Dylan Keats's office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Everything about it screamed success and intimidation. Marble floors, leather furniture, original artwork. Dylan himself was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of focused intensity that probably served him well in court. "Tell me everything," he said after introductions. "Don't leave out any detail, no matter how small." For the next 2 hours, I laid out the entire story. He took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. The handwriting will need professional analysis. The audio too. The surprisingly easy to manipulate recordings these days. But what interests me most is the timeline and the board issue your husband's colleague mentioned. He pulled out a calendar. You said Ryan formally reprimanded her 6 months ago. The supposed agreement is dated 8 months ago. That's a narrow window. You think she's lying? I think someone who's already proven willing to falsify HOA documents might be willing to do so again. But we need proof. He stood, pacing to the window. I'll need access to everything: emails, phone records, financial statements, and I mean everything. If there are secrets, better I find them than opposing counsel. I signed his retainer agreement, wrote a check that made my hand cramp, and left his office with a strange mix of hope and dread. The battle for Ryan's legacy and the truth about our marriage, and our home in this HOA hell, was just beginning. The house felt different now. Every corner held a question mark. Every photograph on the wall seemed to mock me with its captured happiness. Was that smile real when he held me at our anniversary dinner? Was he thinking of her when he kissed me goodnight? I found myself studying our life together like evidence in a crime scene. And I was both detective and victim. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake replaying conversations, searching for signs I'd missed. That HOA conference in Chicago, had he really been alone? The new cologne he'd started wearing last fall, was it for her? The password changes on his devices, when exactly had those happened? The questions tortured me until I'd find myself at 3 a.m. going through credit card statements with a magnifying glass, looking for hotel charges that didn't match his itinerary. My sister Emma flew in from Portland, finding me surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. My laptop opened to Vanessa's LinkedIn page, where she had already updated her status to grieving the loss of my child's father. She'd posted photos, pictures of her and Ryan together at what looked like board events. But look closer. She'd cropped other people out. You could see parts of other people's shoulders, hands. These were group photos she'd manipulated. Emma studied the images. Okay, that's definitely suspicious. But honey, you're driving yourself crazy. What does your lawyer say? Dylan had been working nonstop. He'd hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Rita Clemens, who specialized in corporate and community fraud. She'd already discovered interesting details about Vanessa's background. 2 previous HOA boards where she'd been removed for documentation inconsistencies. A lawsuit from an ex-boyfriend claiming extortion, a pattern of financial desperation following her divorce. But none of that proved Ryan hadn't fathered her child. The DNA test was the obvious solution. But Vanessa's lawyer was fighting it, claiming the stress would endanger her pregnancy. They'd petitioned for a delay until after the birth, which wasn't due for 3 more months. 3 months of limbo, of frozen assets, of public humiliation. I returned to Ryan's home office, desperate for anything that might reveal the truth. The USB drive still taunted me, password protected and silent. I tried everything: our anniversary date, his social security number, the name of our first dog. Nothing worked. Then I remembered something. Ryan had a habit of writing passwords on sticky notes and hiding them. Terrible security. I'd always teased him. I searched under his desk pad, inside book covers, behind picture frames. Finally, taped to the back of his monitor, I found it: VH Fraud 23. My hands trembled as I typed it in. The drive opened to reveal dozens of folders. Board complaints, security footage from the clubhouse, email evidence, legal preparation. My heart pounded as I opened file after file. Ryan had been building a case against Vanessa for months. The security footage was damning. Timestamped videos showed Vanessa attempting to access Ryan's office after hours, trying different key codes. Another showed her at his desk during lunch, photographing documents. The board folder contained not just the expense fraud James had mentioned, but 3 other incidents: forged signatures on purchase orders, attempts to access confidential resident information, suspicious login attempts to Ryan's HOA email account. But the email folder made me sob with relief. Hundreds of messages between Ryan and the board, Ryan and legal counsel, Ryan and security. He'd been documenting everything, preparing for what he called the inevitable lawsuit when I remove her from the presidency. The final email, dated 2 days before his death, was to the head of the board ethics committee. I need to proceed with Vanessa Hargrove's removal immediately. Her behavior has escalated to the point where I'm concerned for my safety and that of my family. Please prepare the paperwork for Monday morning. Monday, he died on Friday night. I called Dylan immediately, my voice shaking. I found it. Everything. Ryan was about to remove her. He knew she was dangerous. Send me everything right now, Dylan said. This changes the entire game. As I uploaded the files, I found one more folder labeled personal. Inside was a single document, a letter dated the week before his death. My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, something has happened and you found my insurance policy against VH. I should have told you everything, but I wanted to protect you from this mess. Vanessa Hargrove has been stalking and harassing me for months. It started small, inappropriate comments at board meetings, standing too close, finding excuses to touch me. I documented everything with the ethics committee. When I rejected her advances, she escalated. She's threatened to claim we had an affair, to say she's pregnant with my child, to destroy our marriage and our home if I don't pay her off or transfer the house to her. I've never been alone with her since the first incident. I've never touched her. The thought repulses me. I'm handling this through proper channels. But I wanted you to know the truth in case she follows through on her threats. You are the only woman I've ever loved. Our marriage is the most important thing in my life. Don't let her lies poison what we have. All my love forever, Ryan. I clutched the laptop screen, sobbing with relief and renewed grief. He'd loved me. He'd been protecting me. And now he was gone, unable to defend himself against exactly the scenario he'd feared. Emma held me as I cried, reading the letter over my shoulder. That bitch, she whispered. That calculating evil. She knew he was going to remove her, I said, wiping my eyes. The timing can't be a coincidence. He dies in an accident 2 days before she would have been removed, and suddenly she appears pregnant with his child. The implications were staggering, but Dylan urged caution when I called him back. This is explosive evidence, but we need to be strategic about how we use it. If she really is pregnant, we still need to handle the paternity issue delicately. She's not pregnant with his child, I said firmly. He was never alone with her. Then whose child is it? Dylan asked. And more importantly, how do we prove it? The answer came from an unexpected source. Rita, the private investigator, had been digging into Vanessa's personal life. Phone records showed hundreds of calls and texts to a number belonging to Marcus Webb, her ex-boyfriend from the extortion lawsuit, the same ex-boyfriend she'd allegedly been fleeing when she divorced her husband. Classic pattern, Rita explained when she called. She finds a mark, usually a married man with assets and HOA power, creates a compromising situation or claims one exists, then demands money or property to go away quietly. When that fails, she escalates to legal threats. But the pregnancy, oh, she's definitely pregnant. Medical records confirm it, but the timeline is interesting. She's actually closer to 7 months than 6. She's been lying about how far along she is. 7 months. That would mean she was already pregnant when she started pursuing Ryan more aggressively. Already pregnant when she began her escalation campaign. I thought about the memorial, how she'd rubbed her belly so prominently, how she'd worn that red dress like a declaration of war. She'd known exactly what she was doing. Every move calculated, every word chosen for maximum impact in our rule-obsessed neighborhood. Can we prove Ryan wasn't the father without DNA? I asked. Rita's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. I'm working on that. Marcus Webb has been surprisingly cooperative since I mentioned the word subpoena. Turns out he has some interesting information about the timeline of their relationship. For the first time since Vanessa walked into that clubhouse in her red dress, I felt something other than despair. Not quite hope, not yet, but determination. Ryan had started this fight to protect us. He'd gathered evidence, built a case, prepared for battle. Now it was my turn to finish it. Dylan's office had transformed into a war room. Whiteboards covered with timelines, evidence boxes stacked along the walls, and Rita Clemens pacing back and forth as she connected dots that painted an increasingly damning picture of Vanessa Hargrove. We need to be surgical about this, Dylan said, reviewing the evidence Ryan had compiled. She's already playing the sympathy card in the media. Pregnant woman versus grieving widow. Guess who wins in the court of public opinion, especially when the HOA board is backing her claims. He was right. Vanessa had given 2 interviews already, tearfully describing her secret romance with Ryan, how they'd planned to start a new life together after his divorce. She painted me as the cold, controlling wife who'd driven him into her arms and who was now using HOA technicalities to deny his child. The comments online were brutal. I'd stopped reading them after someone suggested I'd probably caused Ryan's accident myself to keep him from leaving. The handwriting analysis came back. Rita announced, setting a folder on Dylan's desk. 3 experts independently concluded the signature on that agreement is forged. The pressure patterns are wrong. The letter formations show hesitation marks consistent with tracing. And most damning, the ink chemistry indicates it was written within the last month. Not 8 months ago. That's good. But not enough, Dylan said. We need to destroy her credibility completely. What about the audio? Still waiting on the full analysis, but the preliminary report shows signs of splicing. Words lifted from different conversations assembled to create new sentences. It's sophisticated work, but not perfect. I thought about Ryan's security footage, how it showed Vanessa at his desk during lunch hours. She had access to his office phone. Could she have recorded him without his knowledge? Almost certainly, Rita confirmed. We found 3 separate occasions where she was alone in his office for extended periods. Plenty of time to plant recording devices or access his voicemail system. The investigation had also revealed troubling details about Vanessa's finances. 6 months ago, she'd been on the verge of bankruptcy, maxed out credit cards, facing eviction, her car about to be repossessed. Then suddenly she'd paid off several debts and moved to a nicer apartment. The timing coincided with when she'd started her aggressive pursuit of Ryan. Someone was funding her, Rita explained. The deposits came from a shell company, but we're tracking the real source. My guess, this isn't her first rodeo. Someone who knew her methods might have been backing her play. Dylan pulled up a timeline on his laptop. Look at this pattern. Every time Ryan documented an incident with the ethics committee, Vanessa would have a sudden financial windfall within days. Like she knew she was being watched and needed to accelerate her timeline. Or someone was telling her. A chill ran down my spine. Someone inside the board. Rita nodded grimly. We're investigating that possibility. The IT department found evidence of unauthorized access to board files. Someone was monitoring Ryan's complaints in real time. The pieces were falling into place, but we needed more. That's when Marcus Webb, Vanessa's ex-boyfriend, finally agreed to meet with us. He insisted on a public place, a diner downtown, broad daylight, Plenty of witnesses. He was clearly terrified. She's dangerous, Marcus said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from Rita and me. When I tried to leave her, she claimed I'd assaulted her, got a restraining order, nearly destroyed my life. It took 2 years and everything I had to clear my name. Tell us about the pregnancy, Rita prompted. Marcus laughed bitterly. Which one? She's pulled this scam before 3 years ago. She targeted the president of a small HOA where she worked. Same playbook. Claimed they had an affair. Said she was pregnant with his child. His wife paid her $50,000 to go away quietly. Was she actually pregnant that time? No. She faked the whole thing, bought ultrasound images online, padded her clothes, even had a friend who worked at a clinic falsify paperwork. When the miscarriage happened, she milked it for another 20 grand in emotional distress. My stomach turned. But she's really pregnant now. We've confirmed that. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, well, that's where it gets complicated. He pulled out his phone, showing us text messages. She contacted me about 8 months ago. Said she'd changed. Wanted to try again. I was an idiot, but I still loved her. We were together for about a month before I realized she was playing me again. The timeline, Rita said softly. You're the father. He nodded miserably. She got pregnant on purpose. Stopped taking her pills without telling me. When I found out and left, she said she'd make me pay. Next thing I know, she's got a new target. Some treasurer at her HOA, your husband. I felt sick. She was already pregnant when she started pursuing Ryan. It's her MO, Marcus explained. Get pregnant by one man. Pin it on someone with deeper pockets. The real father can't demand a paternity test without admitting involvement. And the target usually pays to make it go away rather than deal with the scandal, especially in an HOA where reputation is everything. Will you testify? Dylan asked when we conferenced him in. Marcus hesitated. She's vindictive. Last time I crossed her, she nearly ruined me. We can protect you, Dylan assured him. And this time she's the one facing criminal charges, fraud, extortion, forgery. She's looking at serious prison time. The breakthrough came from that password Ryan had hidden, VHFraud23. It wasn't just for the USB drive. It was a master key he'd created for a hidden partition on the HOA server where he'd been backing up everything: emails, security footage, even recordings of his own. Holy, Dylan breathed when we accessed it. He had recorded his meetings with her. The audio was crystal clear. Vanessa propositioning him explicitly. Ryan firmly rejecting her, warning her about inappropriate behavior. Her threats when he wouldn't comply. I'll tell everyone we're having an affair. I'll say I'm pregnant. Your wife will leave you. The board will remove you unless you give me the house and what I deserve. And Ryan's response. I'm recording this conversation, Ms. Hargrove. Everything you're saying is being documented. I suggest you cease this behavior immediately. Her fury was palpable even through the speakers. You think you're so smart? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I'll destroy everything you love. The recording was dated Thursday. Ryan died Friday night. We need to take this to the police, I said, my voice shaking. That's a threat. And then he dies in an accident. That can't be a coincidence. Dylan was already reaching for his phone. I have a contact in the DA's office. This just became more than a civil case. But Vanessa wasn't done. That evening she held another press conference. This time with her lawyer and a new prop. A woman claiming to be Ryan's former mistress from 5 years ago. The woman, clearly coached, spun a tale of Ryan's supposed pattern of infidelity, painting him as a serial cheater who'd finally found true love with Vanessa. It's character assassination, Dylan said grimly as we watched. She knows we're closing in, so she's trying to poison the jury pool. I wanted to scream, to call every news outlet and play them the recordings. But Dylan counseled patience. Let her dig her hole deeper. Every lie she tells is another count of fraud we can prove in court. The investigation into Ryan's accident was reopened. The initial report had noted brake failure attributed to the weather and road conditions. But now, with evidence of threats, the police were taking a second look. The mechanic who'd serviced Ryan's car 2 weeks before his death was brought in for questioning. We're building an airtight case, Dylan assured me. But we need to be strategic about when and how we reveal everything. Vanessa doesn't know what we found. That's our advantage. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about Ryan's letter. He tried to protect me, to handle everything quietly through proper board channels. But Vanessa had escalated beyond what anyone could have predicted. She'd built an elaborate scheme, recruited accomplices, and when cornered, she'd possibly done the unthinkable. Tomorrow we would strike back. The counteroffensive began at dawn. Dylan had assembled a legal team that resembled a military operation more than a law firm. While Vanessa slept, confident in her web of lies, we were filing motions, serving subpoenas, and preparing to dismantle her scheme piece by piece. First move, Dylan announced, spreading documents across the conference table. We file a formal challenge to the handwritten agreement. Not just disputing it, proving it's fraudulent with our expert analysis. We're also filing criminal charges for forgery, fraud, and extortion based on Ryan's recordings. The filings hit the court system at 8 a.m. sharp. By 9 a.m., Vanessa's lawyer was calling, his previous smugness replaced with barely concealed panic. Your client is making a mistake, he warned Dylan over speakerphone. Hargrove is a pregnant woman grieving the father of her child. This aggressive approach will backfire spectacularly in the media, especially in our HOA community where reputation matters. Dylan's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Then I'm sure she won't mind a court-ordered paternity test to confirm that fact. We're filing that motion as we speak. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, that would be harmful to her pregnancy. The stress alone. Non-invasive prenatal paternity testing. A simple blood draw. No risk to the baby. Dylan's voice carried the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. Unless, of course, there's some reason Ms. Hargrove would object to definitively proving her claim. The call ended with vague threats about public opinion and jury sympathy. But we weren't playing for public opinion anymore. We were playing for the truth. The court moved with surprising speed. Within 48 hours, a judge had reviewed our preliminary evidence and ordered an expedited hearing. The handwriting experts' reports were damning enough to warrant immediate investigation, and Ryan's recordings had clearly disturbed the judge. I've seen many inheritance disputes, Judge Harrison said during the emergency session, but rarely have I encountered evidence suggesting such calculated deception. Ms. Hargrove, you will submit to paternity testing within 7 days, or your claims against the estate will be summarily dismissed. Vanessa's face went white. Her lawyer immediately objected, citing stress, medical concerns, privacy rights, anything to delay the inevitable. But Judge Harrison was unmoved. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the serious allegations of fraud and the evidence presented, I'm ordering a freeze on any disbursements from the estate until this matter is resolved. No assets will be transferred to any party until the court is satisfied regarding the legitimacy of all claims. And that includes any HOA liens Ms. Hargrove is attempting to place on the property. It was a victory, but Dylan warned me not to celebrate yet. Cornered animals are dangerous. She's going to escalate. He was right. That evening Vanessa appeared on a national talk show, tears streaming as she painted herself as a victim of a wealthy widow's vendetta. She clutched her belly, voice breaking as she described how I was trying to steal her baby's birthright and dishonor Ryan's final wishes. I have proof, she insisted to the sympathetic host. Letters, recordings, promises he made. But his wife has money, lawyers, connections. She's trying to bury the truth because she can't accept that Ryan loved someone else. The host, clearly coached to ask certain questions, pressed for details about their relationship. Vanessa spun an elaborate tale of secret lunches that never happened, weekend getaways to places Ryan had actually visited with me, intimate moments in the HOA office that security footage proved were lies. But she made a crucial mistake. In her eagerness to sell her story, she provided specific dates and times. Every single one could be disproven with credit card records, security logs, or witness testimony. "She's panicking," Rita observed, taking notes as we watched, "making claims we can definitively refute. This is good for us." Dylan was already preparing cease and desist letters for the show's producers, warning them about broadcasting provably false statements. But the damage to my reputation was spreading like wildfire. Social media painted me as everything from a cold-hearted gold digger to a possible murderer. Then Marcus Webb did something unexpected. Without warning anyone, he went public. The video appeared on his social media account simultaneously. "My name is Marcus Webb, and I'm the father of Vanessa Hargrove's baby. I've stayed silent out of fear, but I can't watch her destroy an innocent woman's life with lies." He laid out everything: their relationship, the pregnancy timeline, her history of similar scams. He showed text messages, provided dates, even shared ultrasound images with timestamps that predated her alleged affair with Ryan. "Vanessa Hargrove is a professional con artist," he concluded. "I was her victim once. I won't let her create more victims. To Laura Bennett, I'm sorry for my silence. I'm ready to testify to everything I know." The video went viral within hours. Suddenly the narrative shifted. Other victims began coming forward: the previous HOA president she'd targeted, a professor she'd blackmailed, a doctor she'd tried to entrap. Each story followed the same pattern: false pregnancy claims, forged documents, threats of public humiliation unless they paid. Vanessa's lawyer tried damage control, claiming Marcus was a bitter ex trying to avoid child support, but the evidence was overwhelming. When 3 handwriting experts independently confirmed the forgery, when the audio analysis proved manipulation, when witness after witness placed Ryan elsewhere during her claimed encounters, her house of cards began collapsing. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source: the woman who'd claimed to be Ryan's former mistress at Vanessa's press conference. She reached out to Dylan, terrified and remorseful. "She paid me $5,000. The woman confessed in a sworn affidavit. "Gave me a script, told me what to say. I needed the money for my kids. But I can't live with this. I never met Ryan Bennett. Everything I said was a lie. Vanessa wrote it for me. We had her." But Dylan wasn't satisfied with just winning the civil case anymore. He wanted justice for Ryan. "The break failure," he said during a late-night strategy session. "The timing is too convenient." She knew he was about to remove her. She knew her scheme was falling apart. "The police need to investigate this as potential murder." The mechanic who'd serviced Ryan's car had already given a statement. He remembered Vanessa bringing her own car in the same week, asking detailed questions about brake systems, claiming she was worried about safety. She'd even asked specifically about how brake failures happened, what would cause them, how to spot the warning signs. "I thought she was just a nervous driver," he told police. But looking back, the questions were really specific, almost like she was taking notes. The district attorney, reviewing the evidence, made the call. Vanessa Hargrove was arrested on charges of fraud, forgery, extortion, and conspiracy. The murder investigation remained open pending further evidence. I watched on the news as she was led away in handcuffs, her red dress replaced with orange jail coveralls. Her pregnancy now impossible to hide behind designer clothes and strategic positioning. She looked smaller somehow. her mask of righteous indignation finally slipping to reveal the calculating predator beneath. But even as the legal system closed in, she had one more card to play. From jail, through her lawyer, she made an offer. Dismiss all criminal charges and she'd sign away any claim to Ryan's estate and admit the baby wasn't his. She's desperate, Dylan said. She knows we have her dead to rights on the fraud charges. She's trying to bargain her way out of prison. The prosecutor wasn't interested in deals. With Marcus Webb's testimony, the other victims coming forward, and the mountain of evidence Ryan had compiled, they had a slam-dunk case. Vanessa Hargrove was going to trial, and she was going to lose. As I sat in Dylan's office watching the wheels of justice finally turn, I thought about Ryan. He'd fought so hard to protect us, to handle this the right way. He'd documented everything, built an ironclad case, tried to resolve it through proper channels. In the end, his meticulous preparation had saved me. Even in death, he was still protecting me, still fighting for our truth against her lies. The civil trial was set for next month. The criminal trial would follow. Vanessa's reign of terror over our neighborhood was over. But the full reckoning was just beginning. The old safe had been Ryan's father's. A massive steel relic from the 1960s that we'd kept in the garage more for sentimental value than practical use. Ryan occasionally stored important documents there, but I'd never paid much attention to it. Now, with a court order granting full access to all marital property, it was time to open it. The locksmith worked for 20 minutes before the tumblers finally clicked. Inside, among old tax returns and insurance policies, was a manila envelope marked insurance in Ryan's careful handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first document was a notarized will dated just 1 month before his death, witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. It was unequivocal. All my earthly possessions, assets, and estates, both material and intellectual, I leave to my beloved wife Laura Bennett. Under no circumstances shall any claim by Vanessa Hargrove or any child she may bear be considered valid, as I have had no intimate relations with Ms. Hargrove and any such claim would be fraudulent. But it was the USB drive labeled for Laura that made me sink to the garage floor. Dylan connected it to his laptop and Ryan's face filled the screen. He looked tired, stressed, but determined. The timestamp showed it was recorded 3 weeks before his death. "My dearest Laura," he began, his voice washing over me like a long-lost embrace. "If you're watching this, then something has happened to me and Vanessa has likely made her move. I need you to know the complete truth." He detailed everything. How Vanessa's harassment had started 6 months ago with inappropriate comments at board meetings and gradually escalated to explicit propositions and threats. How he'd rejected her repeatedly. Documented everything. Involved the ethics committee and legal counsel. How she'd laughed when he threatened to remove her. "She said I'd never make it to Monday," Ryan continued, his jaw tight. "Said she had insurance of her own. I don't know what she meant, but I'm taking it seriously enough to make this recording." He leaned closer to the camera. "Laura, I've never been unfaithful to you. Not with Vanessa. Not with anyone. Every late night was real HOA work. Every conference was legitimate. I have the receipts, the meeting notes, the witness statements to prove it. It's all in the board files under Project VH Defense." The video continued for another 10 minutes. Ryan outlined every step of Vanessa's escalation, every threat she'd made, every piece of evidence he'd gathered. He'd been building a case not just for removal, but for criminal prosecution. "I've also discovered something disturbing," he said near the end. "Vanessa isn't working alone. Someone on the board has been feeding her information, helping her stay 1 step ahead. I haven't identified who yet, but I'm close. Check the Harrison Industries file." The video ended with words that broke my heart. "I love you, Laura, more than words can say. Whatever happens, whatever lies she spreads, Remember that you are the only woman I've ever loved. Fight for our truth. Don't let her win. Dylan immediately subpoenaed the Harrison Industries file from the HOA office. What we found sent shock waves through the case. Harrison Industries was a shell company that had been making payments to Vanessa and to someone else. That someone was Rachel Morrison, the HOA secretary. Son of a... Rita breathed as she traced the money trail. The secretary was in on it. She was feeding Vanessa information about Ryan's complaints, warning her when he was building a case. The conspiracy went deeper than we'd imagined. Rachel Morrison had her own axe to grind. She'd been passed over for treasurer when Ryan received the position 2 years earlier. When Vanessa approached her with the scheme, Rachel had seen an opportunity for revenge and profit. Text messages between them revealed the full plot. Rachel, he filed another complaint. You need to escalate. Vanessa, how much time do I have? He's pushing for immediate removal Monday morning. Then I'll have to move this weekend. Is everything in place? The mechanic has been paid. Make sure you have an alibi. My blood ran cold. They'd planned it. They'd actually planned Ryan's death. Dylan called the district attorney immediately. Within hours, Rachel Morrison was arrested at her home. Her computer seized. Her bank accounts frozen. The investigation into Ryan's accident was officially upgraded to murder. The mechanic, faced with conspiracy to commit murder charges, broke down completely. He confessed that Vanessa had paid him $10,000 to sabotage Ryan's brakes, making it look like weather-related wear. He'd been told it would just scare Ryan, maybe cause a minor accident. He swore he hadn't known it would be fatal. She knew the route he took home, the mechanic sobbed in his recorded confession. Knew about that steep decline on Highway 70. Said he always drove too fast there. Phone records showed Vanessa calling Rachel minutes after news of Ryan's accident broke. Rachel's response, "Is it done? Are you sure?" There was one more revelation in the safe. A small envelope containing photos and a note. The photos showed Vanessa from various angles, clearly taken without her knowledge. The note in Ryan's handwriting said, "Private investigator photos. VH is not pregnant in these images. Dated 2 weeks ago. Padding confirmed. Check medical records carefully." Dylan's eyes lit up. He knew. He knew she was faking the pregnancy initially. We pulled Vanessa's medical records again, this time with a physician reviewing them carefully. The doctor's conclusion was stunning. The ultrasound images in her initial claims didn't match her actual medical file. These were stock images available for purchase online. She only became genuinely pregnant later, likely to add authenticity to her scheme when she realized simple padding wouldn't survive scrutiny. It all made sense now. She'd started with a fake pregnancy threat. Then when Ryan didn't cave, she'd deliberately gotten pregnant by Marcus to make her con believable. Every move calculated, every step planned. The safe yielded one final piece of evidence, a letter from Ryan to me, handwritten and dated the day before his death. "My darling Laura, tomorrow I remove Vanessa and press charges. Rachel Morrison will also be terminated once I present evidence of her involvement. It's been a nightmare, but it's almost over. I wanted to tell you everything sooner, but I needed ironclad proof first. You deserve better than to be dragged through their lies without ammunition to fight back. Now we have it all, the evidence, the recordings, the conspiracy exposed. If something happens to me before Monday, know that it wasn't an accident. They've threatened me too many times for coincidences. But also know this, you are my heart, my soul, my everything. Every battle I fought has been for us, for our life together. I love you beyond measure. Forever yours, Ryan." I held the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. He'd known he was in danger. He'd tried to protect me even then, making sure I'd have everything I needed to fight back if the worst happened. "This is it," Dylan said quietly. "This proves premeditation, conspiracy, Murder. They're both going away for life. The district attorney agreed. Charges were upgraded to first-degree murder for Vanessa Hargrove and Rachel Morrison. The mechanic was charged with second-degree murder and agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. As we left Dylan's office with boxes of evidence for the prosecutors, I thought about Ryan's video message. "Fight for our truth," he'd said. "Don't let her win." I wouldn't. With his own words, his careful documentation, and his final gift of evidence from beyond the grave, we were going to destroy the women who'd stolen him from me. Justice was coming, and it would be complete. The courtroom was packed. Media, curiosity seekers, and those who'd followed the story from that shocking memorial all crammed into the gallery. I sat in the front row, Emma beside me, Dylan at the prosecutor's table. Across the aisle, Vanessa Hargrove sat in an orange jumpsuit, her pregnancy now undeniable at 8 months. The red dress was gone, replaced by the stark reality of her situation. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Thornton," the bailiff announced. Judge Thornton, known for her no-nonsense approach to criminal cases, surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. "We're here for the preliminary hearings in the matter of Colorado versus Hargrove and Morrison. Let's begin." The prosecutor, ADA Jennifer Walsh, stood. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that the defendants conspired to murder Ryan Bennett for financial gain using fraud, extortion, and ultimately homicide to achieve their goals." Vanessa's new attorney objected immediately. "Your Honor, my client is 8 months pregnant and has been subjected to a vicious campaign of—" "Save it for your opening statement, Counselor." Judge Thornton cut him off. "ADA Walsh, present your evidence." The next 3 hours were a methodical destruction of Vanessa's fantasy. The prosecution presented Ryan's video testimony, playing his words to a silent courtroom. I watched Vanessa's face as Ryan detailed her harassment, her threats, her escalating behavior. She tried to maintain an expression of wounded innocence, but her jaw tightened with each piece of evidence. Then came the forensic evidence. The handwriting expert testified that the agreement Vanessa had produced was unquestionably forged, demonstrating the telltale signs of tracing and the impossible timeline of the ink. The audio expert played the manipulated recording side by side with the source material. Snippets from various voicemails Ryan had left for legitimate board purposes chopped and rearranged to create false promises. The level of manipulation required significant technical knowledge. The expert testified this wasn't amateur work. That's when Rachel Morrison's involvement became clear. As secretary with IT access, she'd had the tools and opportunity to create the false evidence. Text messages between her and Vanessa showed them coordinating their stories, planning which evidence to release when. But the most dramatic moment came when Marcus Webb took the stand. "State your relationship to the defendant," ADA Walsh instructed. Marcus looked directly at Vanessa. "I'm the father of her child. We were together 8 months ago when she got pregnant. She told me she was on birth control. She wasn't." He detailed their brief reconciliation, how Vanessa had pursued him aggressively after years apart, how she'd gotten pregnant within weeks, and how she'd immediately pivoted to targeting Ryan once she confirmed the pregnancy. "She said rich married men with HOA power were easy marks," Marcus testified. "Said they'd pay anything to keep their reputations intact. When I refused to go along with her plan, she threatened to claim I'd raped her." "Objection," Vanessa's lawyer shouted. "Prejudicial and irrelevant. Goes to pattern of behavior." "Your Honor," Walsh countered. "I'll allow it." The mechanic's testimony was even more damaging. Jerry Hoffman, looking haggard after weeks in custody, described in detail how Vanessa had approached him. "She came to my shop 5 times in 2 weeks, he said, voice shaking. First asking about brake maintenance, then about what causes brake failure. She paid cash, said she was writing a novel and needed it to be accurate. He described how she'd eventually offered him $10,000 to adjust Ryan's brakes. She said it would just cause a minor accident, maybe a fender bender, something to scare him. She knew his route home, knew about that dangerous curve. And you agreed? Walsh pressed. I needed the money. My shop was failing. But I swear I never thought. I didn't mean for him to die. The courtroom was silent except for the court reporter's keys. Then Walsh introduced the final piece of evidence. Security footage from a gas station near the accident site. It showed Vanessa's car following Ryan's BMW at a distance, staying just far enough back to avoid being noticed. She followed him, Walsh stated, wanted to make sure her plan worked. When Mr. Bennett's car went off the road, the defendant drove past without stopping, without calling 911, without any attempt to help. Finally, it was time for what everyone had been waiting for, the DNA test results. Vanessa had fought it until the judge threatened contempt charges, but eventually she'd been forced to comply. The lab technician was clinical in his delivery. We compared DNA samples from the fetus to samples from Ryan Bennett obtained from personal effects. There is 0 probability of paternity. We then compared samples from Marcus Webb. The probability of paternity is 99.97%. Vanessa's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. That's impossible, she shrieked. The test was tampered with. Ryan is the father. He promised me. He promised our son. Judge Thornton banged her gavel. Control your client, counselor, or I'll have her removed. But Vanessa wasn't done. As her lawyer tried to calm her, she turned to me, her face twisted with rage. You think you've won? You have no idea what we had. He loved me. He was going to leave you. The defendant will be silent, Judge Thornton ordered. He told me everything about you, Vanessa continued, struggling against the bailiffs who moved to restrain her. How cold you were, how you cared more about your career than him. He needed a real woman. I sat frozen, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. But then I remembered Ryan's words in his video. You are the only woman I've ever loved. The venom of a desperate liar couldn't touch that truth. Rachel Morrison's testimony was equally damaging. Trying to save herself, she threw Vanessa under the bus completely, claiming she'd been manipulated and threatened. But the prosecution had their text messages, their financial records, the clear evidence of conspiracy. You received $50,000 from Harrison Industries, the shell company you helped establish, Walsh stated. That's not the action of someone being threatened. That's the payment of a co-conspirator. As the hearing progressed, the prosecution laid out their theory. Vanessa, already pregnant by Marcus, had targeted Ryan as a wealthy mark when he refused her advances and began building a case against her. She'd recruited Rachel, who had her own vendetta. Together they'd planned to either extort Ryan or, if necessary, eliminate him and claim inheritance through a fraudulent pregnancy claim. The murder had been their nuclear option, triggered when Ryan scheduled Vanessa's removal for Monday morning. They'd had one weekend to act, and they'd taken it. The defendants didn't just conspire to commit fraud, Walsh concluded. They conspired to commit murder, and they succeeded. Ryan Bennett died not in an accident, but as the result of a calculated plot by two women who valued money and power over human life. Judge Thornton had heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I find sufficient cause to bind both defendants over for trial on all charges, including murder in the first degree for Vanessa Hargrove and murder in the second degree for Rachel Morrison. She turned to Vanessa. As for bail, given the severity of the charges and the defendant's demonstrated capacity for deception, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. Vanessa's scream of rage echoed through the courtroom as bailiffs led her away. This isn't over. You'll pay for this, all of you, but it was over. The woman who'd strutted into my husband's memorial in her red dress, claiming to carry his child and inherit his home, was going to prison. The truth had finally come to light, written in Ryan's own words, proven by his own evidence, sealed by science and testimony. The trial was set for 3 months later. Vanessa would have her baby in prison, and Marcus would raise the child, innocent of its mother's crimes. Rachel Morrison had already agreed to testify against Vanessa in exchange for a reduced sentence. The woman in red had played her final card, and she'd lost everything. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 6 months after Ryan's memorial. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning to the courtroom with their decision. I sat in the same front row seat I'd occupied throughout the trial, Emma's hand clasped in mine. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Thornton asked. "We have, Your Honor," the foreman replied. "On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant, Vanessa Hargrove, guilty?" The word rang through the courtroom like a bell. Vanessa, who had given birth in custody 2 months earlier, sat motionless as the foreman continued. "Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty of fraud, guilty of forgery, guilty of extortion, guilty on all 17 counts." Rachel Morrison had already pleaded guilty to murder in the second degree and conspiracy charges in exchange for her testimony. She'd been sentenced to 25 years with the possibility of parole in 15. The mechanic Jerry Hoffman received 12 years for his role in the plot. But Vanessa had rolled the dice on a trial, maintaining her innocence to the end, still claiming Ryan had loved her, still insisting the baby had been his, despite overwhelming DNA evidence to the contrary. Her delusions had cost her everything. "Vanessa Hargrove," Judge Thornton pronounced, "you orchestrated a campaign of lies, manipulation, and ultimately murder for financial gain and HOA power. You showed no remorse for taking a man's life, for attempting to destroy his widow's reputation and home, for the pain you've caused to everyone who loved Ryan Bennett. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Vanessa turned to look at me one last time as the bailiffs prepared to lead her away. The defiance was gone from her eyes, replaced by something hollow and defeated. The woman who'd strutted into Ryan's memorial in red, so confident in her scheme, was now just another prisoner in orange, facing decades of concrete and steel bars. "May God have mercy on your soul," Judge Thornton added, "because this court will not." As they led her away, I heard her whisper something to her attorney. He approached the bench, and after a brief conference, Judge Thornton addressed the courtroom. "The defendant wishes to make a statement. Given the gravity of the situation, I'll allow it." Vanessa stood, shackled and diminished. "I want the record to show that everything I did was for my son. A son who will now grow up without his mother because of her." She pointed at me. "I hope you're satisfied, Laura Bennett. I hope your money keeps you warm at night." I stood slowly, meeting her gaze. "Your son will grow up without you because you chose greed over humanity, lies over truth, murder over morality. He'll be raised by his real father, Marcus, who will teach him to be everything you're not: honest, kind, and decent. That's not my victory, Vanessa. That's your failure." The courtroom was silent as they led her away for the last time. Outside the courthouse, Dylan addressed the media while I stood quietly beside him. "Justice has been served for Ryan Bennett. His widow can now grieve in peace and honor his memory without the shadow of false claims and criminal conspiracy." But I had my own words to share. Taking the microphone, I spoke directly to the cameras. Ryan spent the last months of his life fighting against a predator who targeted him simply because he was successful and happily married. He documented everything, protected our future, and even in death he made sure the truth would come to light. To anyone facing similar harassment or extortion, document everything. Tell someone. Don't face it alone. Later that evening I stood in Ryan's home office, now restored to order after months of investigation. The USB drives, the documents, the evidence bags, all of it was gone, returned or filed away. What remained were the things that mattered. Photos of our life together. His favorite coffee mug. The plant he'd somehow kept alive despite claiming to have a black thumb. I pulled out the letter he'd written me, the one found in the safe. His handwriting. His words. His love. All real. All mine. All protected from her lies. The doorbell rang. It was Marcus Webb holding his son, the baby Vanessa had tried to pass off as Ryan's. Despite everything, he was an innocent in all of this. I wanted to apologize again, Marcus said. And to thank you. If you hadn't fought so hard for the truth. You testified. I reminded him. You told the truth when it mattered. That took courage. He shifted the baby in his arms. I'm moving back to Oregon. Starting fresh. My parents will help with him. He paused. I'm naming him Daniel. New name for a new start. He'll never know what his mother did. I looked at the innocent child who'd been conceived as part of a con but would hopefully grow up free from his mother's shadow. Good luck, Marcus. Both of you. After they left, I walked through my empty house. The settlement had been swift after the criminal convictions. Ryan's life insurance paid out in full. The civil suits against Vanessa and Rachel's assets would provide restitution, though no amount of money could bring Ryan back. Tomorrow I would start the process of moving forward. I'd return to work, reconnect with friends, maybe even consider the grief counseling everyone kept suggesting. But tonight I allowed myself one last moment of communion with the man I'd lost. I poured 2 glasses of wine, the Malbec we'd been saving for our anniversary, and sat on our deck watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains gold and crimson. We won, baby, I whispered to the evening air. Your truth defeated her lies. Your love protected me even after you were gone. Rest easy now. A warm breeze stirred the wind chimes Ryan had hung last spring, their gentle melody carrying across the yard. I raised my glass in a final toast to the man who'd loved me enough to ensure that even death couldn't stop him from keeping me safe. The woman in red had lost. The truth had prevailed. And somewhere I hoped Ryan knew that his final battle had been won. Justice, like revenge, is best served cold. And in a Colorado courtroom 6 months after she tried to steal my home and my life, Vanessa Hargrove had been served the coldest justice of all. The truth preserved forever in court records, proving that Ryan Bennett had loved only one woman until his dying day. Me. Thank you all for listening to this HOA nightmare turned justice story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop it in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know. What would you have done in Laura's situation? Hit like if you're Team Widow and share if you've ever dealt with a power-tripping HOA Karen. See you in the next story. Stay safe out there in those rule-obsessed neighborhoods.